Well, good afternoon, morning, whatever it is to you. This is Johnny Palmer, pastor of Calvary Baptist Church, Grace Place, Hiwasse, Arkansas. I've had some computer problems, so maybe we got everything back going. That old one kind of had it for years, kind of gave up the ghost, and I got a new one now, so we'll see how this works. All right, back into our study on John finally, right? After Khrushchev died, rumor was going around that several communist leaders wanted to get his body out of the country. Well, they called President Nixon, see if they could bury him here, and he refused to give permission. And then they called Prime Minister of England, and they were turned down. And finally, they called Golda Meir of Israel, and she said that she would help, but added this. She said, I must warn you that this country has the world's highest resurrection rate. That's for sure. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is the most important truth there is. And frankly, it's what sets Christianity apart from every other movement. Everybody else follows a dead leader. The only one that really rose from the dead is the Lord Jesus Christ. We're going to call this, There Arose a Lamb in Jerusalem. And we're in John chapter 20, and we'll look at verses 1 through 31, Lord willing. Well, you have the stone was displaced. Now the sequence, it says, now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came early to the tomb while it was still dark and saw the stone already taken away from the tomb. It's interesting, the Jews didn't have any name for the weekdays, and so what they would do, they would designate everything with reference to the Sabbath, which is what we call Saturday, and first day of the week, of course, we call Sunday. And each year, millions of people are glued to their television set to watch the NFL annual Super Bowl. At least they used to be before this virus hit. And anyway, it's the most heavily viewed television program of the year. It's interesting. In the past several decades, it has become known as Super Sunday. But the real first Super Sunday took place hundreds of years ago before anyone invented football, much less the Super Bowl. Spanking, our gang, might remember them. They had a hit song called Sunday Will Never Be the Same. I find nobody waiting for me. Sunday's just another day. Sunday will never be the same. They had hits like Lazy Day and Sunday Morning and Like to Get to Know You. But Sunday will Never Be the Same peaked at number 9. Of course, that's way back, like June 1967. Kind of a sad song. Singer tells about his romantic breakup and how the activities that once made Sunday special were now gone. And apparently it was once a day packed with love and meaning. But after the breakup, he says it's just another day, and a rather lonely day at that. Well, in the history of the church, we find the opposite occurring. Sunday will never be the same because our Lord rose from the dead on Sunday, and that's why we meet on the first day of the week. And while this nutty world views Sunday as just, non-essential, while the liquor stores and everything else have to be open. The truth of it is, in God's eyes, Sunday is special, and we're told in Hebrews 10, 24, 25, not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together. So it is an important day, okay? Now, so that's a sequence here, and we have under the severance, it says, and the stone, they saw the stone was already taken away from the tomb. Now, first of all, the size of this stone, Matthew calls it a large stone, Matthew 27:60. Mark calls it extremely large, Mark 16:4. I read that 2 engineering professors from Georgia Tech took the type of stone used at the time of Christ and calculated the size needed to roll against a 4.5 to 5 foot doorway. And they estimated that it would weigh a minimum of 1.5 to 2 tons. So this would have been a very large stone. And then the spectacular, most people don't realize how significant where the stone was moved to. And if you look at Matthew 27, excuse me, it says an angel rolled away the stone. And then in Mark 16, it used the same word. Man, my throat's killing me today. Notice the preposition away. Well, in the Greek, to change the direction of a verb or to intensify it, you add a preposition. Well, he added the preposition ana, which means up or upward, and it's translated in the passage in Mark 16, away. And then there's the preposition apa, which means a separation from, and that's in the sense of a distance from something, and that's used in Luke 24:2. But here in our passage in John 20, the verb aereo is added. It means to pick something up and carry it away. Now, that's really significant. Josh McDowell said, in fact, the stone was in such a position up a slope away from the entire massive sepulchre that John had to use a different Greek verb, aereo, which according to the lexicon means to pick something up and carry it away. That's kind of neat. Baker, New Testament commentary, said they saw probably at the turn in the path that a heavy slab had been turned away already. No, not merely turned away, but actually removed, lifted out of its groove so that it was lying flat on the ground. In a work called A Word for the Day, it says the word aereo, which John uses to give even more information about the stone, says the word means to take up, to lift up, to raise, and is translated taken away instead of rolled away. In other words, the stone was not just rolled back, but actually picked up and moved a significant distance from the tomb. Again, this could only happen if something was supernatural. And that's the point. This is an extremely large stone, and it wasn't just moved to the side. You know, a lot of pictures you see or in the movies, it looks like the stone, was maybe moved a foot or two, to the right. But that's not the picture given in the Bible. It's literally picked up and carried off. And that makes it supernatural, okay? Well, the question you would logically ask would be, who would be the source that would have picked this stone up and carried it off? And, you look at basically who would have the motive to do this, and then who would have the means. And so I guess you could start with the guards. They didn't have no motive. In fact, failure in their duty to protect that tomb would have been a capital offense, okay? And of course the means, these soldiers wouldn't have had the means to literally pick up, that huge stone and carry it off up a hill. It doesn't make sense. And then somebody says, well, maybe the disciples. Well, first of all, they had no motive. Why would they want to move the stone? If they could get the body of Jesus and say he was still dead, well, what would they do with it? Why would they want the dead body of Jesus? And then, why would they all be willing to die, horrific deaths, knowing that Jesus was still dead? Doesn't make sense. Of course, they also lacked the means. They would not only not be able to carry off a stone that large up a hill, but they would also have the problem of getting past the guards. So it wouldn't make sense to think they moved it. And somebody says, well, maybe the enemies. Well, they lacked a motive. In fact, they were the ones that went through all the trouble to make sure that the tomb was secured and sealed. And the other thing is, if they had, the dead body of Jesus, well, all they would have to do is show it, and that would have ended Christianity, basically. And, of course, they lacked the means because they would have to get past the guards and have the ability to carry off this huge stone. Well, the only one really that has the motive and the means is the angel. Now, he had the motive. Of course, it was not to let Jesus out, okay? It was to let us in to see that the tomb was empty. And, of course, as far as the means go, angels are much more powerful than people, and it wouldn't have been a problem for an angel at all to carry that off. Just look at 2 Thessalonians 1:7. And the reason they moved it was simply to show what had happened couldn't be explained or explained away except as a supernatural miracle, something that would have to be done supernaturally by an angel. So the way the stone was displaced is proof that he rose from the dead. Tim Keller gives this story. He said a minister was in Italy, and there he saw the grave of a man who had died centuries before, who was an unbeliever and completely against Christianity, but he was a little afraid. So the man had a huge stone slab put over his grave, and so that he wouldn't be raised from the dead. And he even had an insignia saying, "I don't want to be raised from the dead. I don't believe in it." Kind of a nutty dude. Well, evidently, when he was buried, I guess an acorn must have fallen into the grave. And, I don't know how many years later, but that acorn grew up and into a tree, an oak tree, and it actually pushed open that concrete. And this minister looked at it and said, if an acorn has the power of biological life to split a slab like that, what can the acorn of God's powerful resurrection do in a person's life? Well, the angels removed the stone in a very powerful and supernatural way to demonstrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ was real. Okay? So the stone was displaced, and then the tomb was deserted. And notice the soldiers, they wouldn't have left the tomb if Jesus' dead body would have still been there. And in Matthew 28, 2-4, it says, "And behold, a severe earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven, came and rolled away the stone and sat on it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow." And notice, the guards shook for fear of him and became like dead men. They were terrified, obviously. Well, then drop down to Matthew 28 to verse 12. It says, "And when they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers and said, 'You are to say, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep.'" Well, that's the daffiest thing I've ever heard. If they were asleep, how would they know, who stole the body if it was stolen? Doesn't make sense. And then it doesn't make sense that they would be alive to tell about it. And that's why the verse 14 says, "And if this should come to the governor's ear, we will win him over and keep you out of trouble." In other words, they would bribe the governor so that if they offered him enough money, they wouldn't take the life of these soldiers. Well, then several people witnessed the empty tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, Salome, Simon Peter, John, all discovered that the tomb was empty. Historian Mayer has an interesting point on this. He said, "Where did Christianity first begin? Only the one spot on earth, the city of Jerusalem. But this is the very spot it could not have started if Jesus' tomb remained occupied, since anybody producing a dead Jesus would have driven a wooden stake through the heart of an incipient Christianity inflamed by his resurrection. What happened 7 weeks after the first Easter could have taken place only if Jesus' body were somehow missing from Joseph's tomb." Now, the historian Thomas Anderson said this, "With an event so well publicized, don't you think that it is reasonable that one historian, one eyewitness, one antagonist, would record for all time that he had seen Christ's dead body and record, I saw the tomb, it was not empty. But the